Well, hello, everybody out there. My name is Jenna Doherty. It's very nice to meet you. As I said in my intro here, I have quite the crazy background. So before I get into that, just a little bit of a background on me now. I'm a trans activist here out in the San Francisco Bay Area, born and raised in this boring, tiny little suburb called Fremont. And my upbringing is one that is quite crazy, but also quite familiar to many Americans, and really kind of ties into all the craziness that is going on with this election, specifically with the Christian fascist financiers of Trump's campaign. And I know that that is bringing so many people just like a ton of anxiety, myself included, especially as a trans person, which is why I have the past couple of years, I started I guess you would say, like my activism. I mean, I've always been super inclined to being political, like literally, because my parents were Christian fundamentalists and they homeschooled me. I escaped at 13 years old, thank goodness. But I still went to a private Christian school. It wasn't a whole lot better, but as a extroverted people person, I was like suffocating, being stuck inside. So yeah. Well, let's go all the way back to the beginning. I was born November 15th, 1986. Yes, I'm an old millennial. I'm a 90s kid. And to all the Gen Zers out there who see a lot of 90s nostalgia, you don't, it's, I always get so like conflicted on it because it's like, yes, the 90s was great, but as far as being trans, it was horrible. We had horrible media representation. Like Buffalo Bill is one of the most common examples that transphobes still use to this day because, they're just nasty, selfish bigots who just, they love to dehumanize us. And that's one of their favorite people, this made up character who's just a horrible representation of trans people. Um, he also had the movie Dressed to Kill with Michael Caine, where he was a cross-dresser that would stalk women and would go around murdering them, which is J.K. Rowling's favorite thing to freak out about. Things that don't exist about trans people that she's constantly yapping about. And even on into the 2000s, like our representation was when we're not being made fun of as a joke on Jerry Springer or some other 90s fill in the blank talk show. Most people categorize this by porn titles. And as you know, porn titles were incredibly transphobic. So growing up in the 90s, internet wasn't what it was. And so it was really hard because at the same time, my parents, it wasn't necessarily malicious, but it was just, our environment was very much like an authoritative household. We it was odd in the sense that they would let us question a lot of things. They treated us as little warriors for Christ. They literally trained us up to be activists that fought for right-wing conservative Christian values. And the other problem was they didn't let us question religion, which is, that's kind of a given when you grow up in a extreme religious household, no matter what angle it's coming from. But specifically, a lot of these players that are financing the rise of fascism on the right today, I grew up with. I just like the Heritage Foundation that put together the horrific fascist playbook Project 2025. My parents, and they weren't fascists. They would make fun of the extreme right in some ways, which was, odd. But, they'd be like, although these people necessarily don't represent us, but then like they subscribe to a lot of their ideology. They would get Heritage Foundation pamphlets sent to our house. I mean, I was just out of the womb. My parents were like, "Here's your Bible." Like, it was crazy. Like I said, up until 13, I was homeschooled, and so I didn't get any outside connection with other kids my age. I was going to church 3 times a week. That was the only kids I would interact with. If it wasn't for, like Sunday school. And I also did Awana on Wednesday nights. If you don't know what that is, it stands for Approved Workmen Are Not Ashamed. And it was just basically a group that had the aesthetics of the Boys and Girl Scouts, but all we really did was play games, hear a message, and mostly memorize Bible verses. So, I mean, for a lack of a better, description, it was an indoctrination program. And so that was literally my life. Besides, I had the only other saving grace was my parents weren't super crazy. I mean, they, for the most part, we were only allowed to listen to Christian music. Secular music, oh, no way. Like, it was. And for those of you who, I apologize, for those of you who aren't born and raised in a crazy fundamentalist culture, secular means non-Christian music. We could not listen to much secular music. My parents gave us crazy, interesting exceptions. We listened to the Beatles, and we had a couple Genesis albums. One of my favorites, probably because of nostalgia, is Trick of the Tail. 1975 was the first album without Peter Gabriel. So yeah, it was just, and we had Breezing by George Benson. But other than that, it was strictly Christian music. And that ended up becoming one of my escapes to the outside world. We also were lucky enough to be able to have a TV. A lot of my homeschooled friends didn't have TV. I know. The devil's going to get you in the television, apparently. I was also second of 5. And so, because my parents, they reproduced for the Lord, because that's what the Lord wanted them to do. So it was, that was also one of my saving graces, is I had siblings my age, close to my age. And so, it wasn't until I started playing Little League at 9 years old that I have my first exposure to the outside world and what kids were like outside of church. And I'd heard so many different things. And I had my first real moment where I just realized how indoctrinated I was, and how dorky I was, and how socially inept I was. I also was, dealing with being on the autism spectrum. I haven't technically been diagnosed, but I'm fairly certain that I'm somewhere on the spectrum. But I knew that I was different as a kid. When I was 5 years old, I used to sit in my bed at night and I would pray to God, and I'd be like, please change me into a girl. I don't want to be a boy anymore. I always had these feelings. I would sneak my sister's clothes in secret. And then when I got older, I would sneak my mom's clothes. But yeah, this crazy environment that my parents raised me in up until I was 9 years old, when I had my first exposure from Little League. I'll get to that story in just a second. Literally, like I said, they were raising us to be warriors for Christ. I remember when I was 6 years old, it was the night that Clinton got elected, and my dad was tucking me into bed, and him and my mom were just so pissed, and they were so angry, and they were just like, they thought they were acting as if the world had just ended. And my dad said to me, he was like, you just witnessed the most evil man to ever become president. And I just remember thinking, because like at 6 years old, you tell everything. I mean, you believe everything your parents tell you. And I was just like, oh my God, how could people be so terrible? Why would, why would they vote for someone that terrible? That was the kind of conditioning. My parents would literally like, they would talk about world events with us and get us to talk about our opinions on it. And I'm like 7 years old. I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm just kind of, I mean, I felt like I did, right? But just, and I was just regurgitating whatever my parents told me. Um, so like I said, 9 years old, fast forward. I finally convinced my parents to let me play Little League. I am not very coordinated. I play left bench and right field. And I remember one time showing up to practice, and kids would drop profanity. They would get in fights, and so it was just like this world. I was just blown away. But then like there was these two kids. They were the Hawkheads twins. They were brothers, and they were the bad of the league, right? So here I am, you know, this dorky ass homeschooled kid who is so uncoordinated and just socially awkward. I don't know much about the outside world, and they're physically fighting each other, and I just go up to them, and they're dropping the F, they're dropping, fuck and all these other words, and I go up to them and I say, "God, Jesus doesn't like that. He doesn't like the F word." And it's just like it's like, out of a movie, right? They immediately stop and they just start cracking up. They're hella laughing. And my last name is Doherty, right? So they're like, "Oh, check out Dorky. Oh my God, blah blah blah." And so just like my fate at that moment was like sealed, because I just had this ultimate realization of just how dorky I was and how socially inept I was. Um, and this is, and the craziest part too was I was born and raised in Fremont, San Francisco Bay Area. So we kind of stuck out like a sore thumb, being homeschooled conservative Christians. Um, but it prepared me in a lot of ways for everything that we're seeing today, because a lot of the grievances that the far right has, that conservatives have, and like this like entitlement that they think that they deserve to run everything. Uh, you know, the building blocks of Christian nationalism and Christian fascism. I was directly in that, like the inception of that in the early 90s. My when I was homeschooled, my mom, while I was doing my school, my mom would listen to Rush Limbaugh a lot. We would listen to Rush Limbaugh in the car. This extreme reactionary culture of grievances and entitlement was just ingrained in me. And because my parents pushed me to be an activist, just constantly, no matter where I am, defending far right Christian values, anytime, any place that I could, because they saw it as a dire thing that needed to be done. They saw their culture as being destroyed by secular leftist culture. And of course, we all, if you're a student of history, even a layman student like me, you know that this is absolutely nothing new. In fact, all this is just a regurgitation of, great replacement culture. White people being afraid that they're going to lose being, the number one demographic in this country that they've held on to for over 400 years. It has nothing to do with any sense of like losing morals or, any kind of sinful behavior that's causing the great moral collapse of society. No, it's pure white supremacy. And I'm not going to say that my parents are white supremacists. A lot of Christians, I do believe in my heart of hearts, don't really realize just how crazy these people are, and how intense they are, and how motivated they are, um, in establishing a white supremacist Christian theocracy in this country. They're using Trump because Trump's a moral degenerate that doesn't give a fuck about anything but himself. And so he's found that this helps him stay relevant, and this, gives him somewhat of a protection from, legal consequences. Is you have the most powerful, rich people in society behind you, and they are just like, yeah, whatever, do what you want to do. Just make sure that you're implementing the shit that we want, which is Project 2025 and Christian theocracy. And so, oddly enough, my parents were opposed to a lot of, as far as like Christian theocracy. They were incredibly conservative, but they always did draw the line at separation of church and state. They would always tell us that we are a democracy. We can't have a dictatorship, even if it's a Christian. And so these were morals, as extreme as they were. They had some sense of sanity. My parents understood to a certain degree that having a democracy or a dictatorship was a bad thing, and that having a society that doesn't discriminate against any religion nor promote one over the other is the best option that we have. Even though at the same time I'm being raised in the midst of this culture of all these prominent Christians. It was an insane echo chamber, of course, right? Because, like I said, we had Christian music and most of it was trash. As much as I loved it, like DC Talk, Newsboys, all these were, oversimplified pop music, but with a Christian theme to it. And it wasn't until I was 10 years old that I really start to understand how music can be used in a counterculture way. And it was, oddly enough, from a Christian ska band called Five Iron Frenzy. I was 10 years old when they dropped their first album, Upbeats and Beatdowns. And I'd never heard ska before, and it was just unlike anything I'd ever heard. It was so heavy and fast, but it was also so bouncy and so fun. And the coolest part was that they just were real. They were raw. They were these dorks, these nerds who said "fuck you" to the Christian establishment, right? That literally, like, their first song, "The Old West," was about how Manifest Destiny was basically just evil colonization, genocide of Native American Indians in the name of Jesus Christ. And of course, 10 years old, I had no idea what the fuck that was. I didn't even know that's what they were singing about. But it captivated me because I really felt like for the first time, there was music out there that spoke to me, that understood, that made me realize, okay, maybe I'm not quite so weird. Maybe I'm not quite so crazy. And I would constantly go through that struggle up until the day that I came out. And that's a little bit later. But yeah, it was the first band that opened my eyes to me being able to say I'm different and that's okay. And music in general has been just this incredible guide to everything that I believe and feel. It's this powerful, captivating force that transcends humanity. They tell us that math is the universal language of the world. Well, I strongly believe that music is the universal emotion of the world, hands down. I could be in a completely different culture where I don't know the language, but if and vice versa. And if you play a song that's good, me and the other person can both relate and to the exact same thing. We don't have to speak to relate, right? Because the music has this, it's almost like the spiritual sense that just captures you. It transcends emotions and it transcends logic and reason. I've been to probably over 100 concerts in my life. And I always joke it's the only place where I've ever had anything similar to a spiritual experience. And I grew up in church for 20 years. I left Christianity when I was 20. And one of the big genres that shaped eventually my ideology, my thinking, was metal. And it was really, did I get it right here? My hand. Okay, let's pretend my hand's underneath. These guys, they're my boys. Metallica. You fucking know who they are. James, the fucking man. Papa Het. Like Kirk, Shredmaster. Kind of weirdo, but I like that he's a weirdo. Rob, latest bassist, fucking great. Suicidal Tendencies originally. Not Cliff. I mean, but who's going to be Cliff Burton, right? Not many people. Then, of course, He-Man. We got Lars Ulrich back here in the back. He's the founder of Metallica. He's the one that makes sure all the records come out. So yeah, I'm a bit of a fucking dork when it comes to Metallica. I heard System of a Down when I was a freshman. The Toxicity came out when I was a freshman, and Chop Suey was the first single, and it just fucking blew my mind. And I was like, oh my God, I could not get enough. And then I turned to one of my homeschooled friends later on, and I said, dude, have you heard Chop Suey? It's fucking amazing. And he was like, yeah. He goes, it's awesome. He goes, but have you heard Metallica? And I said, well, I know the name, but no. And he was like, well, you should listen to Master of Puppets. He's like, that's our best song. And I was like, oh, okay. Cool. I'll check it out, And this was like right after Napster got taken down by Lars and Metallica, which I didn't really pay attention too much. I didn't really care. I think it was LimeWire, or maybe it was Winamax, or maybe it was the MP3 player. I don't fucking know. But it wasn't Napster, because Napster fucking ruled. God, I miss Napster. But anyway, not gonna try and be too boomer about it. Remember back when everything was better? Nah. But yeah, I downloaded Master of Puppets, and it was, like when you hear a song and it just completely changes your life. That was for me. First off, I didn't realize how long it was going to be. I was like, oh my God, this is like an 8.5-minute song. But I didn't realize that. First 3 minutes in, I thought the song ended. I was like, wow, that was really cool. And I was like, oh, there's another part to it. Oh my God. And then there was another part. And I was like, oh, this was like everything that I'd been looking for in music. It was fast, it was heavy, it was sophisticated, and it was arranged with like multiple different compositions. And I was just like, it's like they came inside my brain and figured out what I liked and then just made it, right? So I dove in hardcore. Like I became obsessed with their first 4 albums: Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All. I still argue to this day that Injustice for All is hands down their most underrated album. It's my number 2. I mean, I go back and forth with that and Ride the Lightning, but Master of Puppets, cream of the crop. There is a reason why it is considered one of the greatest metal albums of all time. I digress though, because okay, if I get rolling on Metallica, this train's never gonna fucking stop. So, needless to say, I became a huge fucking music nerd. I already was. My dad's a music nerd, and he gave me the excitement to get into music. And So that's how in high school, that's just theater. Of course, I discovered theater, and then I mean, I stopped playing sports anyway, but it was kind of solidified. Like, okay, I could be the lead role in a play, or I can go sit the bench on the baseball team. I fucking love sports. Don't get me wrong. A's, Raiders. I'm an East Bay bitch. Okay, even though we lost both of them. But anyway, point is, if you knew me back in high school, you knew that I love being around people, but I also love really good discussions, and I love just being able to talk to people and get to know them. And that coincided with my upbringing of you know my parents stressing how important it is to have core moral beliefs and stand on your principles no matter what. And with that um, crazy influence of reactionary right wing radio, I always had this dream of being like an activist or being a politician or something, right? But at the same time, I was still struggling with my gender identity and I was having a crisis of faith. By the time I was 20, I discovered George Carlin, and I was already 1 foot out of Christianity. And George Carlin, my goodness, I always credit him for being my catalyst to completely pushing me away from Christianity, which was what happened. When I was 20 years old, I said goodbye and I never looked back. I'm agnostic. I'm not atheist. I think atheists for the most part are smug, obnoxious. Um I've always believed that there's something there. I just think the Judeo Christian interpretation of whatever spirituality is is nonsense. You know, when you look at the Bible and you look at the stories, everything about the Bible is so contradictory. So many contradictory things. I love Jesus's message. I think he was a radical activist, a man of the people who cared more about humanity than religious establishment, which is always something that appealed to me. And but I just couldn't say that God, as Christians believe, exists. I believe that it's absurd to think that humans are the most intelligent forms of life on the planet. I mean, for Christ's sake, think about it. Like, we have the ever expanding universe, the universes inside of universes, and we're supposed to believe that humans who can't even fucking live peacefully on this planet, who are destroying this planet, uh, we're the smartest forms of life. Get the fuck out of here. No. So, and yes, of course, I always thought, oh, what happens when we die? Blah, blah, blah. I went through that phase and I just came to the realization that we're not going to know till we die. And that's not going to matter because who are we going to go tell? We're going to be dead. So I don't care about that. I care about um, being the best person that I can be with the time that I'm given on this planet to be able to do something that matters. And in my 20s, I was very, what's the word I'm looking for? I was just so lost. Which I mean, most who really has their shit figured out in their 20s, right? But like, I was struggling with, I was, I'd already said goodbye to Christianity, and I had my feelings dealing with my gender identity, right? And so I knew there was no way, there was no way that I was going to be able to continue living as that person. I was a very happy go lucky person, very aggressive. Um, not to brag, it was fun to be around because I enjoyed people. I enjoyed life. I enjoy getting to know people and just getting to the core of who they are, like what makes them tick. And at the same time, though, I always felt like I was being dishonest. I just knew, like, there's no way. There's no way that people don't know that I'm living a lie. Most people didn't know. Some people figured it out in a certain way. Like, not necessarily that I was trans, but they knew that I was, to a certain degree, my identity that was assigned to me at birth, cis het white male, was performative because I never felt comfortable being masculine. Even as my former self, I would talk about how toxic masculinity was because it doesn't help, certainly doesn't help women, queer people, um, people of color, and it doesn't help men because it gives them an unhealthy expectation of how to regulate their emotions. And I hated that. I hated it. I hated having testosterone. Hated it. Testosterone puts like this fog on your brain where it's just really strong, overwhelming, like unrest. And it makes you super fucking horny. And I hated it. And so when I finally came to the realization that no, I am a woman. And that was sometime in my mid 20s. I was Katy Perry for Halloween. It was a test. And to I wanted to see people's reactions because I cross-dressed in high school as a joke for Spirit Week. And people loved it, even though I went to a Christian school. And I was like, oh wow, maybe, sometime down the road I can do this. It's also where I got my name too. Um, the only thing about my dead name that I would tell people is it starts with a J, which is how Jenna came about. I was at school and my friends were like, "Oh, hilarious, dude! Ho ho ho!" And I was like, "I know, ho ho ho!" But I was inside, I was just like, "Oh my god, people think I look good, and maybe I can actually pull this off." What? And so my friends were like, "Did you come up with a name?" And I was like, "Well, no, I didn't really think that far." And they're like, "Well, you got to come up with a J, right?" I'm like, "Well, duh." And so a girlfriend in class was like, "What about Joan?" I was like, "Ew, what am I, a 50-year-old woman? No, thanks." And then another friend goes, "Well, what about Jenna?" And I said, "Oh, I like that. That's actually really cute." And so I was like, "Okay." I told myself, when I was all sad at the end of the day, taking off my makeup and clothes, I said, if I do this for real, whenever that is, that's going to be my name. And so I did Katy Perry in college as another test run, huge success. And I love that. I love that costume. Oh, it's one of my favorites. And that was in 2011. And so the next 3 years I spent living as Jenna in secret. I would go out to places, San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland, places that weren't near Fremont where I lived. And I would dress up as Jenna and I would go out to try and get a feel for it. And I was also learning how to do makeup. Took me a long ass time. This face took me fucking years to learn how to do. Oof. Like every other baby trans, it was my first makeup attempts were rough. And so 2015, it's unfortunate that this is my catalyst, but when Caitlyn Jenner came out, it really made me realize, wow, I need to I need to stop being so fucking cowardly. She came out at 65 and she said, I didn't want to go the rest of my life thinking, what if? And that's exactly what I told myself. Because back then, of course, I thought, oh, I'm too old. 28. Oh, I've already had so much testosterone. It's probably killed my hairline. My hair came out pretty good, fortunately, but that was so fucking scary. So fucking scary. Like you're you have this identity that's pushed on you from birth that's not you. And you have all just from toxic masculinity, the entire culture when you're born and raised as a male. And I grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s, so using gay and the F slur as a joke or a pejorative was everywhere. If you acted slightly feminine, you got called gay or you got called the F slur. It was literally verbally abused and physically abused out of you. And then on top of that, I grew up in a very rigid, strict, authoritative Christian, fundamentalist Christian home. So the fact that I even found the strength, sometimes I think about it, that I even found the strength to come out is insane. But I did because I literally could not, I couldn't do it anymore. The thought of being that person killed me. And so I was scared as fuck. My dad rejected me. I had friends that I grew up with that rejected me. But what I didn't expect was how many friends I would gain, and how many friends that I grew up with still stuck around. I actually have a lot of Christian friends that love me still and are super supportive of the person that I've become. And I told myself that these my life was basically I put my life on hold to get all of my surgeries done. I honestly didn't even know if I was going to be able to get them all done. 3 years, and then 3 years after I came out, I started hormones, which was it's incredible. Testosterone blockers, estrogen. It's just that fog of testosterone was finally lifted off of my brain, and I felt like I could breathe. I felt like I could be myself for the first time. I still had a long way to go, but that was a huge milestone, that kept me going. First was coming out. I wrote this long manifesto on my social media. And from the get-go, from the beginning, I wanted people to know, you can talk to me. I'm going to be someone that bridges the gap. Because as much as we want people to educate themselves about who we are, let's be real. We saw during the pandemic how educating yourself turned out. There's a lot of really shitty fucking misinformation out there. And so knowing that I was an extroverted, people-friendly person, I genuinely enjoy getting to know people and educating people. This was just a no-brainer. And so I told him, I said, you can ask whatever questions you want. Take as much time as you need to process this. The only thing I expect in return is to be able to have you respect me. I don't think that's a lot to ask. And so as I was coming into my womanhood and starting to slowly stack up all these wins, like all of these surgeries, I was developing what would eventually become my desire to be a person that bridges the gap in the trans community. And specifically, I wanted to be able to bridge the gap with Christians because I know the culture by the back of my hand. I know the lingo. I know how to talk to these people. And having grown up in such an incredibly strict, rigid culture, there's a lot of people that hate it. But they're like me, they're stuck and they don't know where to go. And they certainly don't hate trans people. They might think that we're weird, they might be uncomfortable with them. But the freaks that you see, the Matt Walshes, the Jordan Petersons, Elon Musk, and all these Christian fascist freaks that are running Trump's campaign, most Christians are not like that. And I truly believe that deep in my heart of hearts, that most Christians are not like that. There's just this really nasty right-wing culture funded by Christian billionaires, who are just obsessed with the patriarchy and sending us back to a Puritan mindset and a Puritan era where the only people that are in charge are cishet white men. Right? That's why they're so obsessed with abortion. They don't give a fuck about human life. They just want to control people's capacity to be pregnant. And they want to control your sex life. And they want to just exterminate anybody, trans, gay, people of color, who don't abide with the Christian white supremacist cis heteronormative culture theocracy that they want. And 2022 was the year that I had gotten my facial harmonization surgery. I'd gotten my boobs. All that was left was my vagina. But I knew at the same time that once I got my vagina, it was going to be like, where's my life going now? Right? And I'd literally put my life on hold all the way back in 2015 to finish what I started. And that's when I started realizing I need to start developing a path post physical transition, which was just a wild concept. Because literally, up until that point, for 7 years, that's all I was focusing on, was transitioning. And so I started getting involved with a volunteer organization in Fremont for Everyone, where our goal is to try and help the marginalized, the unhoused, between the private and the public sector. And at the same time, there was this Christian fascist lunatic named Jen K, who was running for school board. And that was when I had my quota, I guess you would call my coming out from my activism, because I gave a speech saying that this is toxic right-wing fundamentalism. Something that's my fucking bread and butter. I grew up with that. And I gave a speech at the school board. I mean, it wasn't quite so aggressive because I had to be a little bit more diplomatic. But what I was saying was, as a trans person, I don't believe that majority of cis people are like her. And I truly don't. And after that, I started diving deeper into my opportunities for my activism. Full circle, the band Five Iron Frenzy that inspired me to start being my true self and feel comfortable being my true self. I, through fate, had run into one of the members. Her name was Leonore, back in a Five Iron Frenzy show in 2017 in the bathroom. And seeing all of just the heinous, just despicable, dehumanizing propaganda and laws that are still being passed in red states by Christian fascists in the Republican Party, I was devastated. I couldn't. There was nights where I just would cry myself to sleep because I knew what their fucking end game was. Is to fucking kill us. Is to get rid of us. And as much as these Christian fascist freaks scream and play victim, and just all they ever do is talk about grievances that they have and how much weird degenerates they're trying to mutilate their children's genitals and all this fucking bullshit. I knew, having grown up, most of these people do not believe what these Christian fascist lunatics believe. And so I went out on a limb and I messaged Leonore and I said, would you be down to have a conversation bridging the gap between trans people and Christians? And I honestly didn't think it was going to happen. And she said yes. And I cannot tell you how much motivation that gave me, how much life that breathed into me. And man, I'm just so proud. I'm so proud of that interview. I really do feel like it's still so fucking relevant, and so many more people need to see it. So then after that, I was recognized by the city of Fremont for my activism, which was insane. And then this past year has been insane, just beyond my wildest dreams. I got my vagina in January. Just I can't put into words how amazing it feels to finally just be complete and on a path. Not only am I physically my physical transitions are done, I'm on a path to what I feel is like a legitimate career in activism. Because after that, while that was going on, I was talking with a journalist from the San Jose Mercury News doing a profile piece on me. And then I was recognized by my assembly member, Alex Lee, for the entire district, Assembly District 24, for my activism during Pride Month. And that was just, at that point, I really was like, nothing could stop me. I was just so focused. Like, you could not break my determination and my focus, because I really truly believed, because the profile piece hadn't even come out yet. So I really truly believed that something huge was going to happen for me. And then 2 weeks later, the profile piece came out, and I was just soaring up in the clouds. And then, because I had been unemployed since December of last year, which I was fine with because it was 2 weeks before my surgery, and I really preparation for that surgery was fucking insane. It's fucking insane. I needed a break. I needed a break so bad, and so I was like, whatever, I'll find a job at some point. And then reality really started hitting in. The recovery from the surgery itself, let alone being unemployed for 9 months, it was just I my lease was coming up for my apartment, and yeah, I just haven't found a job. So I've had to temporarily move in with my sister, but and yeah, it's really sucks. Not that I love my sister. That's not why it sucks. My family has been amazing, amazingly supportive. Like, so many of my family, I so many things in my life, in my transition, I'm just so fucking grateful. I'm so blessed. Many people in my community do not get to experience what I've experienced, and it's just that's why I'm so passionate. It's why I feel so obligated to speak out. I want everybody in my community to be able to be their true selves, to be able to be free and be who they are meant to be. And if Trump and his Christian fascist handlers win, they implement Project 2025, it's over. A lot of people don't truly understand how sinister Project 2025 is, and the Christian fascist agenda to destroy democracy, constitutional law, and implement fascism, implement Christian theocracy. And that is why I'm so desperate to talk to not only conservatives, but Christians, and just be like, in your heart of hearts, that this is not what Jesus was about. And in fact, this is the complete opposite of what Jesus is about. And you know that. These Christian fascist goblins who only care about money, wealth, and power, they're using this moral degenerate freak to advance their agenda. Because trust me, once they get what they want, even Trump's going to be fucking out on his ass because they think he's disgusting. But he is a means to an end for them right now. Trump is just such a moral degenerate, so selfish and greedy. All he cares about is himself. That's all he's ever been about. But I believe truly in my heart of hearts that no matter how much cynicism you're seeing on the right and the left, most people are not this selfish, not this nasty, right? And some people might say, "Oh, that's delusional thinking," right? Maybe, right? What the fuck do we have to lose in believing in each other? Seriously. I saw firsthand my parents being one issue voters, how much that clouds your morals and your judgment. You know, they were obsessed with abortion. They were willing to sell all their morals and their beliefs down the river just so they can save the unborn. But they don't, but the people in power, the Republican Party, they don't give a fuck about life. They don't give a fuck about abortion. They just want to control you. And now I'm seeing on the left, I am completely disgusted and just morally outraged at the genocide in Gaza. Netanyahu needs to be in The Hague, the world court. It's, face his crimes for what he's done. But saying that Kamala Harris is going to be no different, I'm sorry, that's just ignorant. She's not a fascist who wants to end democracy. The Democrats suck. Yes, the Democrats have a long way to go for a lot of things, including trans issues. But you know what they're not saying? We want to erase trans people. Who are the ones erasing trans people right now? Every fucking red state. Yes, Democrats don't have a backbone. Yes, they need to fight for our humanity more. And I'm going to fucking push them. But at the same time, real change takes time and it takes patience. That's what these Christian fascists understood. That's why they were so focused for the past 5-6 decades, slowly gaining power. Throwing a little temper tantrum, saying, "Oh, I'm going to vote third party." 3 weeks out from the election, it's not going to do shit. All it's going to do is just give fascism a better chance. Cynicism is good in small doses. But when you start letting it cloud your judgment and saying that, oh, it's better to teach the Democrats a lesson than protect the marginalized and the vulnerable, you're no different than those who are willing to throw everything away for abortion. We need to start to come together as human beings. Fuck everything that's dividing us. I mean, trans people, we're people. We're not predators. We're not coming after children. We barely make up 1% of the population, for Christ's sake. Do you really believe that we're these scary, monsters who are just have all this power? It's fucking out of control. Most of my trans comrades are losing their fucking rights, their healthcare, everything. I'm so fucking lucky and I'm so fucking privileged to live in a blue state. But guess what? If Trump gets elected, my privilege in a blue state is going to be gone. All 50 states. Eventually, we're all going to lose our rights because we won't have democracy. We won't have a constitutional form of government. We're going to have fascism. And people need to wake the fuck up. Now, I really do believe in my heart of hearts that most people are not this insane. Most people are not this selfish. But we can't sit on our ass. We have to get up and vote. We have to, and I'm not saying that this is going to be the end all be all because it's not. Voting is a tool. It's not an end all be all thing that you use as an extension of your morals and your identity. No, it's just a fucking tool in your toolbox that you use. All voting is on a national level is just harm reduction. If you really want to make change, you need to get out in the off years, not just every 4 years go to the voting booth. Start getting involved in your community. Start making sure that things that you can do things at a local level that are going to be better for humanity overall. Every step of the way, you need to ensure that whether it's voting, whether it's getting involved in your community, you need to come at it from what am I doing that's making things better? That's how you have to do it. We're in a binary system as far as our elections are concerned. Third parties are not going to do shit. And at this point, it's not Obama Romney in 2012. We have a neoliberal elitist on one side, Kamala Harris. Most of her agenda is I'm not on board with. But Trump literally wants to end democracy. He wants to implement a fascist government. It should be a fucking no-brainer. You vote for who's going to stop fascism in the short term while we build a long-term strategy to eventually take down the duopoly, right? But just saying, oh, fuck the system, I'm going to vote third party. Okay. What you're saying is trans people, what you're doing is putting trans people at risk. You're putting gay people at risk. You're putting people of color at risk. You're putting women at risk. Also, what? You can sit on Twitter and talk about how leftist you are? Nobody fucking cares. It's fucking selfish. We have to stop. We have to stop the cynicism. We have to stop. We have to start seeing each other as human. You can make fun of me. You could tell me that I'm a sellout. You could tell me whatever. That's fine. But like I said, why not try? Why give in to doomerism? Why give in to accelerationism? Why not try to be a good person? To be a person that cares about their fellow person? I know it sucks. I know that it just feels like it's the same thing every 4 years and nothing's going to change. Maybe, okay? But you know what? At least if you try, you can have some sense of pride. You can have some sense of a self-accomplishment. Get out in the world. Get offline. Do fucking something. I know the majority of people are good. I know it. And you know, maybe I am delusional. Maybe I am pie in the sky, or I trust people too much. Like I said, oh well. I'd rather be burned than be cynical. There's more to life than just being angry and not giving a fuck about anything. Find something that fulfills you. Find something that's going to make you be a better person. Don't just sit online and say everything sucks. Oh, well, wah. Let's burn everything down. That's lazy. That's selfish. We're better than this. I really do truly believe we're better than this. Anyway, if you made it this far, thanks so much for listening. You know, I've had so many people follow me over the years, and I really do just love and appreciate every single person. I just love and appreciate everybody, period. We're so lucky to be given the life that we're given. We're so lucky to be living at this time that we're living, even if it's horrible. Because I really do believe that in these moments, we kind of just get back to what's important and what matters is humanity and loving each other. And I just really hope that the um, I really hope that the feeling that I have deep down that humanity is good and that things are going to turn around does happen. But that's only if we vote. That's only if we put faith in each other and we invest in each other and we trust each other. And that takes hard work. But I believe we can do it. I love you. I love all of you. I really do. Talk to you soon. Bye.